In the bustling streets of Bangkok, amidst the sweltering heat of a typical day, I found myself drawn to the allure of the Lotus Cinema. It was the year 2021 and The Medium, a Thai supernatural thriller, had captured the attention of movie enthusiasts across the city. Despite my usual reservations about horror films, the intrigue surrounding this particular movie compelled me to step into the cool darkness of the cinema's interior. The lobby was alive with anticipation as moviegoers gathered, exchanging excited whispers about the scares that awaited them. I purchased a ticket, feeling a mix of apprehension and curiosity as I made my way into the dimly lit theater. The air was thick with humidity, a stark contrast to the icy chill of a typical winter night. As the lights dimmed and the movie began, I found myself ensnared by the eerie atmosphere of the movie. The story unfolded with a sense of foreboding, weaving a tale of ancient rituals and dark forces beyond human comprehension. The audience's reactions mirrored my own: gasps, nervous laughter, and the occasional scream punctuated the tense silence. But then, as the credits rolled and the lights flickered on, a sense of unease settled over me. The theater was eerily silent. I glanced around, expecting to see the usual post-movie chatter, but the seats were empty, the aisles devoid of life. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing in the empty space. There was no response. Panic began to gnaw at the edges of my mind as I realized that I was alone in the theater. I made my way to the exit, the sound of my footsteps echoing off the walls. The corridors stretched out before me, dimly lit and eerily quiet. The air felt heavy with a sense of foreboding, as if something sinister lurked just beyond the edge of my vision. I pushed open the exit door and stepped out into the lobby, hoping to find anyone, who could help me make sense of this eerie emptiness. But the lobby was deserted, the concession stand unmanned, the ticket booth empty. Fear clawed at my chest as I realized the gravity of the situation. How could everyone have disappeared without a trace? Was this some kind of prank or elaborate hoax? But deep down, I knew it was more than that. There was something dark and malevolent lurking in the shadows, something beyond rational explanation. I pulled out my phone, intending to call for help, but there was no signal. My hands shook as I pocketed the useless device, feeling a growing sense of dread settle over me like a shroud. I ventured deeper into the theater, searching for any sign of life. The corridors seemed to stretch on endlessly, leading me further into the heart of darkness. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if I were walking through a nightmare from which there was no escape. And then, just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, I heard it, a faint sound coming from one of the screening rooms. Heart pounding, I followed the noise, praying that it was anyone, who could help me make sense of this madness. I pushed open the door and stepped inside, only to be met with a sight that chilled me to the bone. The room was empty, save for a single figure sitting in the front row, a shadowy silhouette bathed in the flickering light of the screen. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling with fear. The figure didn't move, didn't even acknowledge my presence. It just sat there, staring ahead with unseeing eyes. I took a cautious step forward, my senses on high alert. Something about the figure seemed off. Its movements were jerky and unnatural, like a puppet being manipulated by unseen hands. And then, in a sudden burst of movement, the figure turned towards me, its face contorted into a grotesque mask of horror. I recoiled in terror, stumbling backwards as it lurched towards me with outstretched arms. I turned and ran, the sound of my footsteps echoing through the empty corridors. Behind me, I could hear the figure's ragged breaths, its footsteps closing in with every passing second. I burst through the exit doors and into the sweltering heat of the night, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I didn't stop running until I reached the safety of the crowded streets, heart pounding, breath coming in ragged gasps. As I made my way home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me out of that empty theater, something dark and malevolent, lurking just beyond the edge of my vision. To this day, I can't bring myself to set foot in a movie theater again. The memory of that night still haunts me, a chilling reminder that sometimes, the most terrifying horrors are the ones that lurk in the shadows, waiting to pounce when you least expect it. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation straight out of a horror movie. It was 2014, and I was working late again at Bayview Tower in Manhattan. I was so engrossed in my work that I lost track of time. Little did I know, the office closed at 8 p.m., and when I finally decided to call it a night around 11 p.m., I found myself in a predicament. I walked down to the main gate, only to discover it locked and the entire building plunged into darkness. Panic started to creep in as I realized there was no way out. I tried calling a few colleagues, but most of them had already left for the day. Finally, I managed to reach Sarah, who promised to contact the building's caretaker for help. As I waited in the dimly lit lobby, the silence of the deserted building began to weigh heavily on me. That's when I heard faint footsteps echoing from somewhere above. At first I brushed it off, assuming it was just my mind playing tricks on me. But as the footsteps grew louder, curiosity got the better of me. I hesitated for a moment before deciding to investigate. Maybe there was someone else stuck in the building, just like me. I followed the sound, climbing up flight after flight of stairs until I reached the top floor. The hallway was eerily quiet, illuminated only by the faint glow of emergency lights. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing in the emptiness. No response. Heart pounding in my chest, I continued down the corridor, the sound of my own footsteps echoing back at me. And then I saw a shadowy figure hunched over in the corner. "Hey, are you stuck too?" I asked, my voice trembling with fear. But the figure remained silent, unmoving. I took a step closer, trying to make out its features in the darkness. That's when I saw a pair of glowing eyes staring back at me, filled with malice and hunger. I stumbled back in horror, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. It was like something straight out of a nightmare, a twisted, grotesque creature that seemed to defy all logic. Without thinking, I turned and ran, the sound of my own panicked footsteps echoing through the empty corridors. I didn't stop until I reached the lobby, where I found the caretaker waiting for me. Breathless and trembling, I tried to explain what I had seen, but the words caught in my throat. To my surprise, the caretaker didn't seem surprised. In fact, he looked almost resigned, as if he had seen it all before. "Ah, you've met him then," he said, his voice low and grave. "That's old Mr. Jenkins. He's been haunting this building for years." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Ghosts? Haunted buildings? It all seemed so surreal. But as I looked into the caretaker's eyes, I saw no hint of deceit or madness. Just a weary acceptance of the strange and unexplainable. Needless to say, I never worked late at Bayview Tower again. And although I never encountered old Mr. Jenkins again, the memory of that night still haunts me to this day. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes, the things that go bump in the night are all too real. In 2012, when my friends and I decided to embark on a camping trip at Greenwood High School in Washington. We were a tight-knit group, consisting of myself, Jake, Emily, and Max. The school grounds, with its sprawling fields and dense woods, seemed like the perfect setting for our adventure. As the sun began to set, we set up our tents and gathered around the campfire, sharing stories and laughter. But as darkness enveloped the surroundings, the atmosphere took on a more eerie tone. Despite our nerves, we were determined to enjoy our night in the wilderness. Eventually, the time came for us to freshen up, and we made our way to the communal shower area. The cubicles were small and dimly lit, with the sound of running water echoing off the tiled walls. We took turns bathing, chatting away to ease our nerves in the unfamiliar setting. As I stepped out of the cubicle, I noticed Jake waiting outside, leaning against the wall with a casual grin on his face. "Hey, what took you so long?" he teased, his voice echoing in the empty corridor. I chuckled, shaking my head at his impatience. "Sorry, man. You know how it is," I replied, patting him on the shoulder as I walked past. But when I turned back to say something else, Jake was gone. Confused, I glanced around the corridor, but there was no sign of him. Shrugging it off as a prank, I rejoined the others at the campsite. To my surprise, they were all huddled together, their faces pale and filled with dread. Emily was the first to speak, her voice trembling as she recounted what had just happened. "We were in the showers, right? And this guy, he was standing outside talking to us. But when we came out, he was gone," she explained, her eyes wide with fear. My heart pounded in my chest as I realized they had all experienced the same thing. We exchanged uneasy glances, the realization sinking in that something wasn't right. Determined to find answers, we decided to head back to the shower area. But as we approached, we heard footsteps echoing in the darkness. Turning the corner, we came face to face with Jake, his expression mirroring the one we had encountered earlier. "What's up, guys? Just heading to the showers," he said casually, oblivious to the terror etched on our faces. We stumbled back in shock, unable to comprehend what was happening. Max was the first to break the silence, his voice barely a whisper as he spoke. "Do you guys remember that incident a few years back? The student who drowned in the pool?" he asked, his words hanging heavy in the air. A chill ran down my spine as I recalled the tragic event. It had happened years ago, but the memory still haunted the halls of Greenwood High. "It can't be," Emily muttered, her voice trembling with fear. But deep down, we all knew the truth. The ghost of the drowned student was among us, seeking companionship with the living. And as we stood there, paralyzed with fear, we realized that we were never truly alone in the darkness.